Savita Mansuklal Haria. This is my grandma's name. My grandma was my second mother. She raised me. My parents both worked full time. My grandma picked me up from school, dropped me off to sports events. We argued. We had so much fun. When I was 18, I would come home at 3 a.m. after partying. My grandma would be coming home at 3 a.m. after a night of cards, and we'd have a little interchange in the kitchen. 2 years ago today, I lost my grandma. Today is a very significant day for me, and I ummed and ahed about what I should talk about today, and I decided I'm going to honor her by just sharing a little bit about her last few days. September 16th, 2019, I was in the prime of my life, really looking forward to my dad and my sister visiting me in the United States. I get a call from them. They've left Perth International. They're en route, flying through Hong Kong, on their way to Boston. About 2 hours later, this is sort of midnight, and I get a call from my mum. My mum couldn't reach me because I was fast asleep. She calls my roommate. My roommate, groggily comes up and goes, "Hey, Sahel, phone for you." I pick it up and my mum said, "Hey, your grandma's not in a good state. We're taking her to hospital. I don't think you should say anything to your dad or your sister because it could just be a light scare, but I just wanted to let you know and I'll keep you posted." And I started to freak out, and I couldn't really sleep that night. Throughout that flight where my dad and my sister, which was a 14-hour flight, throughout that flight, they're unable to be contacted. And so my mum and I are interchanging, and we're, getting updates, and I'm writing everything frantically down to tell my dad. My grandma is my dad's mum. My dad and my sister land in Hong Kong, and I give them a ring and I let them know that your mum's in hospital and there's a real chance that we'll need to fly home. And there's a crucial point there because my dad had to decide, do we just leg it and go back to Perth now from Hong Kong? Obviously, that's a lot closer than flying all the way to Boston and having to leg it. And we get on the phone with the doctors and we get on the phone with my mum, and the doctors are very confident, this is just a minor scare, she'll pull through. And so my dad and my sister take that flight and they get on that plane to Boston. On the flight to Boston, which is another 14-hour flight, again, my mum and I are interchanging. I'm barely working. I'm in and out of conference rooms trying to take calls. And I get the call from my mum saying, "You guys need to come home." My dad flies into Boston Logan, and I assumed, he'd turn on his Wi-Fi and I'd be able to contact him and tell him, "Hey, I'm going to book our tickets. I'll meet you right at the airport." He doesn't turn on his Wi-Fi. He's thinking it'd be a great surprise to drive up to my house and knock on my door and see me. And so, I'm freaking out, wondering where their flight is. The flight says it's landed, but my dad hasn't messaged. My dad knocks on the door, and he's got a big smile on my face, and I'm in tears. We make the decision to fly back to Perth, and we get to Perth on the 19th of September. From the airport, we go straight to the hospital, and the hospital actually opened visitation hours for us after hours because they heard of our story and they heard about what was happening. And my grandma wasn't in a state where she could speak, but she could see, and her eyes were moving, and we asked her to blink if she understood, and she understood. And it was really, I'm very grateful that I had those 2 to 3 days with her. I spent as much time as I could in those 2 to 3 days by her side. And we get the call on the 22nd of September, which was today, 2 years ago, that she's peacefully passed in her sleep. And, it's really sad, and, we're all going through the grief, but the silver lining is that she didn't suffer. She died quite peacefully. And we decided at that moment that, instead of this day being a sad day for us, what we're going to do is we're going to have a card game in her honor annually, where we're going to get all of her best friends together, all the people that she used to play cards with every Saturday and Friday night, all the people that when I would come home at 3 a.m., she'd be talking about with me in a drunken haze, her in a mental haze of having won in gambling and playing cards. And we decided yep, this is an annual tradition we're going to do. And on Saturday, we had our second annual card game in her honor. And it was such a great opportunity to be able to get everyone in the same room together, to be able to remember her, to be able to have those conversations, to be able to really dedicate some time to remembering my grandma. And, you know, it was an incredible, incredible day. It was filled with sadness and laughter and happiness. And, you know, we kicked on and there was drinking till about 1 a.m. that night. And the stories came out and we were crying and laughing at the same time. And it was a really nice way to remember my grandma. And so I also think it is such a great opportunity for me to be able to speak about her, to be able to tell all of you about the type of person she was and the journey we had to go through to kind of see her in her last days. And I'm very grateful that I had that time with my grandma. Thank you.